it's the theme music with the whole vibe. That means it must be Tuesday.
It is.
Welcome to Beyond 2D. I'm one of your hosts, Jessica Dugas, and this is my fabulous co-host.
Oh, the one and only Farron Dozier, retired Army Sergeant First Class. Hmm. 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 Hmm.
There it is.
2D.
2D. We had a great time going 3D last week,
Oh my
right?
goodness. Wild.
It was great. It was really great. If you guys missed last episode with the fabulous Scott Mason, make sure you go check that out. This has been our series on integrity, and it's been a moment,
Beyond a moment.
beyond a moment. Absolutely. No, I think we talked about communication. We've talked a lot about, we've thrown a lot of big words at everybody
Yes.
since we started this show. And I think that it's been a great opportunity, at least for me, to kind of intentionally go down the rabbit hole and explore these thoughts and ask myself, do my opinions, I saw you post about opinions earlier,
That's gonna be one too.
do my opinions need to change? Do I need to hang on to them? Is it necessary for me to feel the way I do about certain things? And so
Mm.
so I've really enjoyed this series. What has been one of your biggest takeaways from our discussing integrity so far?
That really the basis of all the conversations that we've had so far is all the foundation of it is from integrity.
Mm, yeah.
And you can't look out the window and see integrity. Like it's an experience,
Mm,
right? And so with all the opinions that we have about life that we developed over time with evidence and proof that that's the way it is and that's the way she is and that's the way he is based off our opinion, where's integrity in that?
mm, right.
And so
Right.
it's stored it. Integrity is stored it by our own personal opinions and experiences that we say are our truth.
Right.
That's where I'm at today.
Yeah. I love that. Miss Brittany's joining us this evening.
What's
Happy
up, Brittany?
Tuesday. And everybody else, I see you all there. Say something, say hello, join us.
Don't be shy. Don't be shy.
Let us know where you're joining from and how you feel about that big word, integrity. Um, yeah, I love what you're sharing about, and really going back to what you were sharing at the beginning about principles and things like that. And I wanted to kind of bring up something that we haven't really talked about regarding this topic, and that is whether you think it's more difficult to tell whether or not someone has integrity in the online space. Um, I have a few reasons for bringing this up, but I'd love to hear your initial thoughts about that.
My initial thoughts of integrity and social media presence is there's a term that came out over the last few years called Twitter fingers.
Oh, I haven't heard that one.
Twitter fingers. That means people have a lot of confidence and courage and say things that they wouldn't say in person. So they get on Twitter and their Twitter fingers,
Okay.
yeah, they express themselves on them Twitter fingers. And so, I mean, for me, how you can tell on social media if a person has integrity is the words, the choice of words that they use,
Mm,
and how if they're if they're talking from their life or about their life,
mm,
and are they describing it? Are they being open and honest with words that actually that you could be like, oh, you're dealing with that,
right.
not oh, I'm struggling or I'm tired of people that do. No, you if you can put on social media what you're dealing with the best language that you can share about what you're up to or what you're dealing with, to me
Mm,
that's a person integrity because people say on social media, don't air out your dirty laundry and don't air out this and don't air out that.
right.
But you know what? For some people, that's where their confidence is behind that device, behind
Right.
that screen. And for somebody to read that post and not react to it and not judge them for it, but ask more questions, that's where we are today. That
Mm,
social media is a lot of confidence for people to say what they need to say or describe what they want to say.
right,
But
right,
I think we have to be. So every time I see a post something like that, like I don't take it for granted. Like
right.
I may respond to it, and they might just be, oh, it was just I was just kidding, you know. But
Mm.
there's always some truth to a just kidding, a JK. There's
Yeah.
always some truth to a JK.
I will agree on that one. So one of the things that there's a person that I follow who um sent out an interesting email earlier today about how they they have been sharing about their relationship with their child and giving advice about parenting.
Okay.
And someone on there and shared about it in an email newsletter or something like that, like a story.
Hmm.
um and there have been posts on social media that have given the air of like and being an expert at parenting.
Mm,
Okay.
mm, mhm,
Even though that's not their niche, that's not what they do or
mhm,
anything like that, but that's that it's been there.
mhm,
And so when they sent out this email, they got a response back from someone on their email list who happened to be someone local to this person. And they said, I saw you at this place with your child yelling at them, blah, 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 blah. And that's not how you come across on social media. That's not how you share about your parenting style, and I saw you acting differently, so you need to take me off your mailing list.
oh, okay.
And honestly, my my initial reaction is, this is the risk that you take sharing on social media, in your work or anything else about this expertise that you have. You anybody when you get called out not being in integrity,
Hmm.
that
It's
is
too
something
late.
you run the risk.
It's too late at that point.
Yeah,
It's too late.
yeah. So and this interestingly enough is not the first time that I've heard with this person a difference between this online persona and how they are in real life or offline, in person. And so I really struggle with that. There have been times for me where I've checked myself, my own integrity, and said, is this are you responding online exactly the way that you would respond if you were face to face with this person?
Mm,
And I've had to check myself in that way several times. And I think that I'm definitely more aligned now than I was before.
hmm.
Before, I was definitely trying to save face online. Like, I was
Hmm.
like, this is an opportunity for me to just be the best person ever, and I think it takes a lot of courage to put yourself out there and be like, look, I'm not perfect, and when you get me offline, I'm not perfect then either, you know.
See, if that was me, like you said, if it's difficult because human beings, we love to pretend like everything's fine, right? That's our pretend.
Yeah.
We pretend like everything is fine, and we don't realize that people might see us out in public behaving in another character flaw
Mhm.
that we try to suppress, that doesn't we don't think gets expressed. So like in an incident that way, if I'm gonna come from a parent perspective and I'm gonna put on social media about my parenting skills, I would be honest and I would come out like, hey, you know what? I used to treat my child like this. And one time we was in public and I actually went off on him in public and this. But guess what I learned after
Right.
self-reflecting? Guess what I so that person that sees that new view of you that you've discovered for yourself, then they're gonna read that and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, you're right because I did see you acting a fool with your child, but here you are now saying that you acknowledging acting a fool in public as a
Mm,
parent, and now you've done some research because
right.
no matter even with the life that I have right now that I've transformed a lot of area and healed myself in a lot of areas, there are
Mm,
still people that see the old Farron
mm,
and they still remember the old Farron who was doing all the crazy stuff in the military and doing all the wild stuff. And so when they first see me, they be like, "Hey, you blah 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 blah."
uh-huh.
I'm like, yeah, that was a good time, but that's not what I'm up to today. Like,
Yeah.
so it's you like you say, you run the risk when you try to portray like everything is fine and you want to look good to not look bad, right? And that's the pretending that we do. If I put more in depth, is that human beings we like to look good and pretend to look good to avoid looking bad,
Right.
and that probably clearly in that email message was what that person was addressing. You over
Yeah.
here trying to look good in this email, but I seen you in the store on
Mm,
aisle 5, and
yep.
you was not what you just put in this email.
Yeah.
And so now, how do you deal with that as a person?
Right. You know, it's interesting because I've always even though I've most of the time felt really aligned between how I am in the online space and how I am in person, I've always had that fear of not living up to what, because we all make assumptions of each other in this online space, right? Like I can sit here and be like, I bet Ferran is wearing khaki pants with that shirt, right? Because there's so much in the online space that we can't see
Mm-hmm.
or know about each other. Yes, that happens out at the grocery store. You run into somebody, you don't know what their life is like at home, but it happens even more, I feel like, in the online space. So we make these assumptions. So I often have this fear of, like, when I meet people in person, are they gonna get what they think they're gonna get, like, and I don't know what that is or where that comes from, but I have to, like, sort of be okay to know that I have behaved with integrity as much as I possibly, like, I've laid it on the table, and any assumptions now are on their part, that may or may not have been made, right?
But that before you get to social media, you've got to deal with that up in here first,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So if you're putting on a different, you know, face on social media, that's why that person saw you in the public
Mm-hmm.
with the real other piece of you acting a fool. But if you come to
Yeah.
social media with the acting a fool and the piece, like that's your integrity. That's just who I am. And you might see a post about me talking about God and Jesus Christ, and you might see another post that I agree with what it is to be human. That's crazy.
Right.
But that's me. And I'm not gonna deny myself or I'm not gonna act like I have it all figured out either.
Right.
Right. But so if you do that, if you're that kind of person in your real life, then that will definitely reflect on your social media presence.
Mm.
Right. But if you're still pretending in your real life, pretending, then my social media presence is going to be more embellished because I could really look good over here. And then when somebody sees you and calls you out on some stuff, and
Yeah.
then it's like, oh yeah, well, eh,
Yeah.
whatever. You're just judging me.
How do you respond if you're called out on your integrity? How do you feel, like, do you feel like you need to get ahead of it? Do you feel like you need to explain yourself in some way? Do you feel like you just now need to go internal and shift things? Like, how do you respond if you're called out in your
Yeah.
integrity?
So the old Farron post principles and beliefs in Christ and all that was
Mm,
the. Oh, I'm a good defender. I will defend myself till death.
mm.
Oh yeah, till death, and I will give you reasons and justifications and all that.
A
But what I,
list.
oh yeah, like, but today, Like I said, if somebody calls me out on something that I say or around my, or I feel like is attacking my integrity,
Mm,
then I first have to just be with that, right? And just look at it and say, okay, is that true? Or
mm,
was it true in that moment that when I did this or said this, was that my behavior in that moment? And if I could say yes, then I own it.
right,
There's nothing to defend. See, a lot of times people in reverse will poke stuff back at you to see if I got you. And if you get hooked like a fish, then they got you. And they sometimes people do that on purpose. They
right,
want to test you. Oh, you say you this kind of person? Well, I've been watching you and I've seen this, and so they point that out. And then if I go, that's not, but then you got me. But if I can
right,
respond back and say, you know what, I appreciate you for pointing that out. What makes you say that? And
right,
then give them a chance to see what they saw. And then I could be like, you know what, you got me. You're right. You're right.
right.
So now what? Now I'm not hooked. I own it. Yeah, you're right. I said that,
Yeah.
and I own it.
From an outside perspective, I think like, seeing someone behave out of integrity um already raises a red flag. But then when I see them backpedal and try to like explain away and cover things, like, I'm out. I feel like I'm out at that point.
Well,
Like,
I have to challenge you on this statement you just made.
yeah.
Who are we to say that a person is not in integrity, though?
If no, I'm saying if they've admitted that they've done something um that is not in integrity for them, that is not, or they've been called out on something,
Uh huh.
that, and they say, look, I behaved badly in this situation. But I
Uh
feel
huh.
like instead of just going, I recognize what I've done and taking responsibility for it, but instead like making up excuses and backpedaling, and like, I feel, I don't know, I just, for me, I just, it turns me off even worse than the initial,
But
you
that's
know.
but that's the nat but that's a natural human response is to
Right.
defend ourselves. Like
Well,
we all
it can
we
be a natural human response, but
I
I'm
don't I
not
don't I
done
don't think
saying
anybody
that.
but I don't think anybody escapes that natural if like I said, unless you've been trained and developed and you understand where it's
Right.
coming from in your own life. I could give you grace or mercy or allow you to be you. You know what I did when I took all this education? I would say to myself when I would go to places and I would you see people behave and you're like, oh, what are you doing? Like, you know what I started saying to myself?
Hmm.
I'm the biggest jerk in the room.
Right.
And when I said that I'm the biggest jerk in the room, I allowed everything else to go around me that went on around me, let it be.
Mm,
Because nobody's gonna be the bigger jerk than I am.
right.
And by me claiming that, allow people to behave and express themselves and do whatever they need to do to survive whatever that thing that we were at. And then and make them wrong because what I consider integrity for my life may not be integrity for you.
Right. But
And
for me, it's not about making them wrong. For me, it's about boundaries for me at this point. If I don't want to have a person in my life who is behaving in that way, then that's going back to the story I told. That's the risk they took. They lost a person in their circle because the person said, "Look, you're not acting in a way that is the same way that I see you behaving. You're behaving in two different places. It comes across as very two-faced. I don't want that in my life." So for me, it's not about making them wrong. It's about going, is this what I want in my circle? Do I want to interact with this at this point?
yeah, I mean, I can see that, but at the same time, none of as we get into our next subject in the next few weeks, me pointing yours out is because I can recognize where mine's coming from.
Yep.
So sometimes when people point out the flaws of other people, it's a mirror reflection of
Right.
us as well. So I don't know. It's tough because for me, boundaries don't live in the physical world.
Mm,
They live in our mind. And so when I put up these walls, these boundaries, it's in my language. It's
right.
not like a barrier that you're gonna see when you come up to me and I see you in the store. Oh, there's my boundary. Like, no, that's something
Right.
that we talk to ourselves about putting that boundary up. And I just think, not that I think, but I see it as more of a mental stuff that we use words to protect ourselves from.
Right.
So it's and that's maybe we'll talk about that sometime too. Is when people say boundaries, like what are you really saying when you say I'm putting up boundaries around people who like what do you
Hmm.
like what are we really saying when we say a boundary? Because
Right.
I can't look outside. Oh, there's your boundary right there. Like I can't see your boundary. It's more inside of us. So
Right.
it's a tough conversation because
Right.
people are people, and we want to look good and not look bad, and we will lie to be accepted. We will
Hmm.
pretend as much as we can just for that moment to feel accepted, and then
Right.
when you get called out on it, it's like, oh, they figured me out,
Right.
and like it's
Right.
devastating, but it's tough.
Yeah.
That's a tough conversation.
It's an interesting one for me because I think boundaries are that would be a great conversation to have because it's thought of so differently by many different people. But for me, like it's about compartmentalizing almost, where if the situation had happened to me, like I mentioned earlier about the person who was caught doing behaving in two different ways, because this is a was a business situation that it was happening on a business email list, where it happened, I might go, okay, like I'll still follow this person, but I won't be partnering with this person to like launch a program or work. It would be different for me. Like it's boundaries for me aren't always this building of a wall or cutting someone out or saying completely like no. It sometimes it's about going, okay, these are the things that I'm going to participate in and these are the things that I'm not going to participate in. And that goes back to my own integrity, my own principles, my own honesty, the own my things that I live by. And if I'm going to hold myself to that, then I'm not going to necessarily work with someone who behaves outside of those principles.
So then, if when you put it in that frame, then why not work with that person? Why not? Because
Well,
if we see that this person is dealing with integrity issues, who's going to be the one that's going to go and be like, you know what? Come here, let me talk to you.
there's a difference between talking to someone and someone who doesn't want to change, someone who continues to act out of integrity on purpose. And so if someone, look, here's the thing, if someone steals money from you, okay, let's use that example. If someone steals money from you, are you going to be that one person that's going to be like, you could come to the bank with me, you could I'll give you the password to my account. Like there's a difference between like reaching out and but being a doormat and opening yourself up to being stolen from. Like that's a harsh
Those are,
example,
but
but
those are two different worlds. You stealing money from me is a whole different conversation than you posting up an email saying that this is how I train my kids and discipline my kids.
isn't it
Like
both still honesty?
no, no,
Yeah, they're both honesty. The two
no,
extremes maybe, but it's
no.
both honesty.
If you if but if I understand how people are, then I'm not gonna be, even if I saw that person in the store and they send an email like that, I don't think I would be the one to say, hey, you know what? I actually saw you differently. See, that's that person who responded to that email like that, trying to look good
Right.
for themselves. Like they ain't like they stuff don't smell either.
And see, I don't necessarily see it like that because if so, taking for example our children, okay, so if our children are doing something that we don't want them to do, by us pointing it out, so they're running in the street,
Mm-hmm.
okay, let's just say they're running in the middle of the road and we have to say, hey, no, come back, no, we don't run in the middle of the road. By us pointing that out, that's not saying I've never run in the middle of the road before. But with somebody, we've got to be able to hold ourselves, to hold each other accountable as well. Going back to that accountability conversation, we've got, and going back to the first communication conversation. We have to be able to communicate with each other and hold each other accountable without going off the deep end and going like,
Right.
this means that you were never, you're saying that your stuff don't stink, that you're never,
But
nah.
that if I'm gonna hold you accountable in an email, I would talk to you, and it wouldn't even be about the email. I would come to you and say, hey, you know what? You sent this email to this group here,
Mhm.
and actually, I saw you behaving in the like. This is not how your
And
email.
that's what she did. It
But
was a
she,
private thing. He turned around and sent her email to his whole list and said, I was called out and this is what happened. And now I'm going to give you 50 reasons why it happened.
oh, yeah, that's still it's after the fact. And the thing about integrity is, if you know you're out of integrity, and that person calls you out on it, it's too late. Like, it's you got to clean it. But the integrity is coming to you knowingly that I did something or I said something, and I'm in front of it. Because if you come to me, then it's a different dynamic. But if I can be in front of my integrity and recognize, you know what, let me go and do this. Because if you bring it up, it's a different dynamic.
Right.
But if I bring it up and I'm out of integrity, I can clean it up.
Mm-hmm.
To me, if you come to me, it's after the fact of my integrity, and then there's a whole different way I have to clean up that situation. But if I
Right.
bring it to you and say, hey, you know what, this is what I said. I didn't mean to say it that way. Can you forgive me? Blah blah blah. Because I brought it up to you. To me, integrity is when you recognize it, you take responsibility for it, and you go and talk to that person about it. Don't wait for them to come to you.
Right. Right.
That's how I've learned how to apply that for myself.
Yeah.
Because if they bring it up, oh,
Yeah, and I'm not a fan of when you witness something, going to the question I have on the screen as well. When you witness something, I am not a fan of calling people out publicly. I do not.
right.
I A lot of these people that I see, they'll get, even if they think it's funny, like getting a private message, they don't like what somebody says and they screenshot it and they put it on Facebook or whatever to respond to it. Either, you could tell, you could do that in so many ways. You could respond to the person one on one, which is always my go-to. You could also tell a story. You could tell a story that doesn't call somebody out, that doesn't put their name, their picture, their whatever else on Facebook. I feel like that's in such poor taste, and we're not creating a safe atmosphere for people to be able to change if they want to.
And that's the whole point. That's the whole point. That we got to look at that person who's putting that person on blast, almost in the same retrospect of, so why are you trying to look good out of everybody? Why are you trying to point this out? Why are you trying to look good? So now you're trying to look good to not look bad about your stuff.
Right.
So we're all, like I said, we pretend like everything's fine, and it doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just doesn't allow for people to just be themselves.
Right. Right. Brittany said it's still honesty, and I'm going to trust that both of them are going to be dishonest. It don't matter if it's the money or the email. And she brings up that T word, which we're going to talk about for the next few episodes.
Oh, I
We're
don't
going to be
trust it.
talking about
I
trust,
don't trust it.
and I'm going to be absent.
Me too. So y'all would just be here by yourself. Trust and believe.
Yeah. Just trust that somebody somewhere is talking about trust, and you can go have a nap or something.
For real.
Brittany says, I won't do it publicly, but I may do it privately if I care enough. So that's what I have to ask myself when I'm bothered by somebody else's, by my assumed
Hmm.
somebody else's lack of integrity. I have to ask myself why I care so much. Why does it bother me? And I think in the story that I told earlier, there was an instance where this person and I had an interaction, and I felt had after, like, I felt deceived
Mm.
after this. And so my being bothered by the entire situation, what is partly me questioning my own level of trust. We'll add that in for next time or something like that. It always comes back to ourselves, and that's why
Yeah,
when
yeah, yeah.
you talk about the mirroring thing, sometimes yes, it is mirroring our own stuff, but sometimes it's also like it's a mirror of like this is what we're not going to do. We're not going to do that again.
Well, you said it earlier, and I didn't acknowledge you for that part of it though. But with integrity, what it allows to happen is workability.
Mm,
And so, if without integrity, there's no workability
right.
because somebody's not being honest, somebody's not telling the truth, and that one thing that you are holding back could be an important piece
Yeah.
to us having this thing work.
Right.
So yeah, integrity. What it creates is an ability to have some workability, and
Right.
that's really the best thing is for
Right.
workability. Because other than that, I can pretend like everything's fine, and I'll log off and go back to my life,
Yeah.
whether I have integrity or not. But if I want to work with you and be a part of this and have this thing work, I've got to have some workability, and you've got to be able to come to me and talk to me and say how you feel, and this is not working or this is working, and I got to be okay with that.
Right. Right.
And that's workability. I could be honest. You know what? You're right. I didn't do that. You're right. I didn't do that when I said I was going to do it. That doesn't work. My time is valuable. Your time is valuable. That's workability. That's communication. That's communication. That's how that works. But if
Mm,
I can't do that, then
yeah.
it doesn't work. And then the wedge gets further and further away. And then there's
Mm,
frustration. The experience leaves us with frustration, upset, pissed off, whatever that is
right. Yeah.
for both parties.
Exactly. Exactly. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to take a breath. We're going to have a drink of water. We're going to come back, finishing our discussion on integrity right after this.
Wow. Bye. Hey, what's up, man? How you doing?
I'm blessed, my brother. How you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Hey, did you see the game last night?
Oh, that was a good game.
But did you see the shot?
I lost money from that shot.
Oh
too,
man, that
bro.
shot was cold,
I
man.
hated it, but it was good. Damn. What's in those jeans?
You really want to know?
I do.
Exhaustion, muscle spasms, asthmatic issues, unexpected sickle cell trait crises.
Damn. Are you serious? When I was young, I found out I had sickle cell trait. My mom's told me, but I ain't have no knowledge of it. But when I got older, I had a child, and the doctor told me my daughter has sickle cell trait. Do you know the facts that both parents have sickle cell trait? There's a 50% chance the child may have the trait, and 25% chance the child may have the disease.
Hey, that's what's the count. Do you know that 2.5 million people in the United States have sickle cell trait? 300 million people globally? I didn't find out I had sickle cell trait until I was in the Army, 10 years. Next thing you know, I had a sickle cell trait exertion site.
Sickle cell. I thought that was a black gene or something.
Nah, man, the Latin community is number 2. 1 out of 36,000 babies are being born with sickle cell disease. You could be Caucasian, Mediterranean, European. You gotta know your bloodline, man.
There is an inherited gene in our community that has been forgotten. The name is sickle cell trait. WDCONSCT, also known as What's the Count, is out to bring awareness, education, and prevention to people all over the globe. Want more information? Call us now at 323-215-5384 or visit www.wdconsct.org.
WDCONSCT.org. Welcome back to Beyond 2D.
Hey now.
This has been a good conversation today.
Yeah, I'm not gonna let you slip by some of them stuff you was trying to drop over there.
Listen, I'm giving it right back to you, sir, because I really I feel like integrity is a quality that, um as an Italian, is something that comes up often in the words of honesty, loyalty, things like that.
Uh-huh.
I remember hearing about certain things growing up.
Forget about it. Forget about it.
Forget about it. All right. I ran across this website. It's a website about success, and it said that they claim that there are 5 attributes of personal integrity. I wanted to run these by you because
Okay.
some of them kind of, they go into what we've been talking about.
Yes.
Follow a set of values
Okay.
is number one. That's those
Mm-hmm.
principles.
Mm-hmm.
Focus. Let's see. Be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Honesty.
Mm-hmm. That's in my
Um,
list.
they said number three is help others
Definitely.
as a part
That
of
is.
personal integrity. Number
That
four,
is.
lead by example. We talked about leadership with Scott
Mm,
Mason last week.
yeah.
And number five is take responsibility, which
Yeah.
we also talked about as well. So I feel like that we did a good job without even, looking up the experts and whatnot of kind of going over those different things over the last 4 weeks.
So I have accountability, integrity,
Hmm.
ethical behavior,
Hmm.
transparency, trustworthiness, acting in the that part about helping others is acting in the greater good
Mm,
in your community and your society. Honoring your commitments, those are all attributes,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
But that word attributes have been showing up in my life the last couple of weeks, and sometimes the attributes in our state of mind of survival could be an outside force because of this happens, because of this is what happens.
Mm,
So some of us live in a cause and effect world. If you live in a cause and effect world, then where's your integrity,
right.
right? Because now you're blaming some other situation that happened is why you behave the way you behave.
Mm,
But if I have integrity, then no matter what happens in my world, I could be responsible for it. So there's no blame to anybody else. I could
right.
see that, you know what? I didn't say that. And because I didn't say that, that could have happened. As a result of that, I can own that because I didn't say that. I
Right.
could have actually said something that would have made a difference and not making you mad at me. But I know I didn't say it, and then you got mad at me, then I'm not gonna go to you. Then why are you mad at me? I could self-reflect and be like, you know what? I didn't say that when I had a chance. And that could have been the difference in this workability in this relationship. Those are the attributes of integrity
Mm,
versus the attributes of because of this happened.
right.
And it's never on me. And if I really live like that, I'm gonna let karma take care of it.
Yeah, that's a fun one.
I'm gonna let karma take care of it. So I'm still not responsible for anything
Right.
because karma's gonna get it.
Right.
Yeah, so it's tough.
We talked about early on that the opposite of integrity is dishonesty, but I found something else this week that said a good antonym or the opposite word for integrity is hypocrisy.
Hmm. It's pretending.
I thought that was a good one too because I like that word.
I spoke about hypocrisy at church, and when I looked up
Mhm.
hypocrisy, where that word came from, it came from back in the day, Greeks or whatever. That was their play. They labeled it hypocrisy because it'd be one person putting on a mask, and he'll do like the one scene with the mask on, and then he'll go off, come back, and put another mask on, and that was called hypocrisy because he
Mm,
was pretending to be the different characters, but that was their stage play back then.
right. Right.
So it's pretending.
Mm. Can you compartmentalize uh, integrity?
I used to. That's how I used to live within.
Mm,
That's how I recognized that I had integrity in the military, but not in my personal life.
mm,
And when I discovered that, and at 40 years old, 13 years ago, I was like, oh, that's what that is. I
mm,
was like, oh, and so I could be honest because in my brain, I could justify integrity in the military, and then I could justify not having integrity in my relationships because of I was avoiding trying to be disappointed or whatever the childhood stuff I was dealing with didn't allow me to be expressed.
right.
But what they taught us was it's still you.
Mm,
You're the common denominator in all of it. So how can you have integrity in the military but not over here in your personal life when we in our brain, that's what I'm saying, in our mind we try to separate things, but
right.
it's still us.
Yeah.
And that when I got that revelation, I was like, oh, okay. And that caused me to go to my relationships and clean them up.
Right. Yeah, we had last Tuesday I had a good friend of mine, Haley Halleck, who is a Psychology Today preferred therapist, and we were talking a little bit about how she does a lot of coaching around personal development with clients,
Mm-hmm.
and she works on in a lot of different areas with people, and she says, look, when someone is struggling with something in one area of their life, more than likely it is spilling over
Oh
into
yeah.
every single area of their life. So if they're struggling with it, she used the example, because we both knew a little bit something about this, perfectionism. Perfectionism, okay. Um and she was like, look, if someone's being, a perfectionist at work, most likely they're being that way at home, they're being that
Mm-hmm.
way with their spouse, they're being that way with their kids, they're being that way,
Mm-hmm.
when they volunteer, everything they do is it's spilling over into that. And so I think it's, when we go back to the question I was asking earlier about how difficult is it to tell if someone has integrity in the online space, I think when you talked about specifically like people sharing
Mm-hmm.
a lot of different things in their life, so if they tell a personal story and say, I gambled away all my money last week or
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is, my savings. Then there's people that are going to look in and be like, they're going to like put two and two together and go, oh, that's probably how they're going to be, what they're going to do with, their money in their business, or what are they going to do with these different
Right.
things in this area.
Yeah.
And so I think it's, I wanted to ask about that compartmentalizing, because I feel like that's something that a lot of people are challenged with when it comes to
Yes.
integrity. They feel
Yes.
like they're just, they're good because it only, they're honest where business is concerned.
Mm-hmm. And that's if you point that out that way, that's what's hurting us,
Mm,
right? Because in our minds we think we can separate who we are as a person, and that person that you see from 8 to 5 is the cool Farron, and then 6 to midnight is the other Farron that shows up. But
right.
guess what? That other Farron is who that lady saw in the store acting a fool and be like, wait a minute, you don't act like that at work. You act like that like so we because the brain is so powerful.
Right.
If you just get in just a little bit of brain science, you would have a greater understanding of yourself
Mm,
and our behavior. And
yeah.
we pretend to look good. We pretend to look good to avoid looking bad at all cost.
Right.
At all costs. And then we go home and then we wonder why life looks the way it looks and we can't figure it out. But in the background, that subconscious mind is making sure we stay alive to not be hurt again, to avoid disappointment, to
Mm,
avoid being disappointed in ourselves again. Like there's so many layers to it, but
right.
you as a person have to be able to at some point tell the truth to yourself of why don't I have integrity in my relationships? But if you're not willing to even look,
Right.
then that's you get to have that life and it's not gonna the workability is not gonna be there.
Mm,
And
absolutely.
they call it the battle of the mind, the battle between the spiritual battle At church, we call that. That's where your spirit and your subconscious mind is battling. You got the angel on one side and then the devil on the other side, and they're trying to tell you which one is which.
Right.
Yeah, it's like because I can easily go out of integrity, easily
Right.
with no
That kind of
principle.
that was going to be the question, because tying into I mentioned that we're going to be talking about trust. Can you trust yourself to always behave with integrity, Farron?
Lady, I don't trust myself. So I had to. I'll say this for the listeners to be prepared for the next
Mm,
episode. You can't you can, but you cannot say that you trust as like 100%,
mm,
like an all or nothing. Like you can't articulate trust as all or nothing
mm.
because look in your own mirror and see how much you trust yourself in that all of nothing frame. And when I could look in myself and say, you know what, I don't even trust myself 100%.
Right.
So then how can I trust people 100%?
Right.
So then that's my reflection of you because if I know what I could do and get away with it, hmm, what could you do and get away with it? And then now I'm not trusting you because I don't trust me.
Right. I think that ultimately that's where a lot of things with trust, and even this conversation about integrity comes in. That's why we concern ourselves with the integrity of others,
Mhm.
because we are aware that we are more than capable of acting out of integrity ourselves.
Very much so.
We know what we can do. We know what we're capable of. And you can and I think um that's why I get a little I have a couple red flags coming up, when I see people in the online space using the always and never
Yeah,
words, big words
exactly.
like always and
Exactly.
never. Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-mm.
Those are the generalized conversations that we have to stop.
Yeah.
I'm starting to talk because I learned it a few months ago. We could talk about it or we could talk from it. And if I talk about it, it's a general conversation. I'm talking
Right.
about it. But if I talk from it, I'm giving you my life experience. I'm giving you my true self. And that's
Mm,
a totally different connection to me and you versus a generalized, I'm over here talking about it. And if I talk about it, then I'm not applying any of those principles to my life to be an example of what I'm living from. And so
yeah.
people read the Bible for years and go to church, but they don't ever apply it to their life. And so you talk about the Bible, but you don't talk from it because you don't put your life in
Right.
there to live from it. And that's just one, but that's just life. Period. Take away the Bible, put whatever you follow or believe in. You're just gonna be out there.
My daughter just took my bell out of my box.
Yeah,
Yeah, that I mean, talking is even when we go into talking about leadership, and teaching, if we teach and lead from rather than about,
right.
that's how I feel like that's how we can avoid uh so much misalignment where integrity is concerned. If even in the example I gave earlier, if the person, when sharing about their experience with their daughter, was speaking from it rather than
Exactly.
this
About
is
it.
what you need to do, or
Right.
this is what I did, period, end of story.
Right.
you
It was
know
the way that email was framed, and it was probably framed to look good.
yeah,
It was probably framed to make themselves look good, feel good for that moment. But then, hey, somebody saw you and they say, buddy,
yeah,
that's not the person I'm reading right here is not the person I saw."
right, right. Brittany said that deserved a few bell rings. There it is.
Yes. Let me see what it
Um,
is about
so what
accountability.
are you looking okay, let's start with this. What are you taking away from this conversation with integrity over the last 4 weeks?
I'm not gonna lie to you. I still struggle with integrity.
Mm,
And so it's a practice.
yeah.
And imagine if integrity is always out, then I'm looking in my life to figure out where I could put it back in.
Yeah.
And like I said, if I could look in my life and be like, oh, I spoke to that person, and I did, yeah, I'm out of integrity.
Right.
Integrity is, I could say, I'm going to call you at 5 o'clock. Or you tell me you're going to call me at 5 o'clock. And I agree to the 5 o'clock time frame. And you don't call me at 5 o'clock.
Mm,
I'm out of integrity just as much as you are because I let it go. My integrity is to call you at 5:05 and be like, hey, we supposed to talk at 5 o'clock. What's going on?
mm,
That's integrity.
right.
But if I let it 5 o'clock go, where's the workability at? And why do we even say meet at 5 o'clock? Talk at 5 if we wasn't really going to talk at 5.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then I could be over there. My time is valuable, and where she at? She didn't show up, and it's all on her. And then I don't never call you,
Yep.
right? But I'm blaming you for missing the phone call. Maybe I didn't really want to talk anyway.
See, what I like to do is when someone is really late or doesn't show up, I send an email, a text, a Facebook message, and then I message Brittany and I'm like, do you know that this person did not show up? And I do my integrity part. Then I complain and then I'm like, I've been late before.
For real.
There's been moments. We all have those. I want to. I think for me, like I really want to say that in the end that it is normal for us. See, she already knows. She already knows.
Tell the truth. Tell her to tell the truth.
Listen, it's very normal for us as humans to have that response of how dare they.
Exactly.
How dare they disrespect me? How dare they not show up? And you can go ahead and feel free to complain about it for a minute because it is disrespectful. It's not nice. But if you can't in the end of that see that there have been moments when people have felt disrespected by you, or have felt you have been dishonest, or have felt you have not been integrity, then we're not in touch with our own humanity.
No one escapes it. No one escapes it. So again, it's like that's that self-examination, that's that self-reflection. That's how much do I care and love myself first? Because if I don't care and love myself, or I'm avoiding being disappointed in myself, it's gonna play out in my life too. And I'm gonna treat people the same way.
Right.
But that's normal. That's a normal person behavior.
Yep.
But if you want to be an extraordinary person and you want to be able to stand out because you live from those principles, just living from those principles will have you stand out amongst people anyway.
Absolutely.
Just because of how you value, I don't like that term, but the moral compass. I don't like that term, moral compass, but people use that term.
Yeah.
Moral compass.
I think my compass is broke.
I got an army one. I got two norths.
Yeah, something like that. We're going to be talking the next few weeks about trust and what are you looking forward to most, or what are you not looking forward to about our series on trust coming up?
No, I'm like I said, I'm not perfect. I got a lot of work, but I still have trust issues. Like it's not. It may be something that I have to manage for the rest of my life, and being able to be aware of that is my plus, right? Because I can't say, I used to say all or none, and I used to use those words that cancel out any workability. I trust women, depends on the woman, maybe 85%. I don't trust women 100% because I know that people are capable of doing whatever they do, right? And so I'm not, even the word says, do not put your trust in man. You cannot put your trust in 100%.
Yeah. Yeah.
I already feel my in my side right here. That's why I'm not gonna be here.
We're gonna go back to some of my guided meditation training. Where do you feel it in your body when I say the word trust? Let-
Ah,
Let's release that together. It's
ah.
good. I think we're gonna. This is gonna be a great series because I think that look, everything that we've talked about on the show so far has tied together in some kind of way, and I think that the conversation about integrity and communication and responsibility and accountability, those are all things that I think play into the level of trust that we feel like we have for ourselves, for other people. How do we trust again when maybe we've been burned?
Yeah,
And then maybe we could get a little. Would you be willing to get a little spiritual with this trust conversation? We're going to talk about how does what's the difference in trusting God and maybe the difference between trust and faith.
for sure.
I think it would be fun.
It's all a lifestyle at the end of the day. Even integrity. At
Mm,
the end of the day, integrity, it has to be a part of your lifestyle.
yeah.
And if it's not a part of your lifestyle because of, again, I want to look good, I want to be right, my opinions are not integrity. My opinions are only my perception, my view. There's a
Mm,
whole nother 8 billion views out there. And so I can't have my opinions be my principle I live from,
mm,
because somebody's going to view that opinion from another perspective, and then
right.
I'm going to defend that. I'm going to fight for my view, and then where's my integrity? My
Right.
integrity is saying, you know what? I have my view of this. Tell me about why do you view it like that?
Mm,
That's my integrity about my opinion. Why do you view it like that? And then now we can have a conversation. But if I
yeah.
make my opinion right and you're wrong, in the midst of that conversation, there's no love present.
Well, I just want to say that 30 minutes ago I was right, but I still love you. So
You're starting to clean it up right there. I would word it a little bit differently, but that's you're getting there. You're getting
Okay.
there.
All right.
It was a good shot.
I took it. Listen,
You still sound like you're being right.
I enjoy I really enjoy both sides of the coin. I really enjoy asking questions or putting comments out there so I can watch everybody else's wheels spin and just sit back and people watch.
That's how we got here.
How we got here.
That's how we got here.
All right, my friend, do you feel good about wrapping up integrity?
Oh, I do. And again, as I shared early on the social media platform, I really appreciate you, Jessica, because you have this is the space that I get to express Farron,
Right,
right?
wrong, or indifferent.
Right, wrong, or indifferent, good or bad, with integrity or no integrity.
That's it.
When I click end, I could walk away from here and be like, I said what I needed to say,
Yeah.
right? And so
Yep.
I appreciate the space that you have created for us to have these talks, and for people to have that same. Imagine you can have this same conversation with your family, right?
Right.
Without judging, without assessing, without
Right.
decompartmentalizing your integrity, and just having workability with your children. Imagine having your children be able to have these conversations with you, and them
Right.
not thinking that you're going to put them on punishment because of what they feel or experience for themselves. Where's that at? Where's
Yeah.
that at? So this is, if you could see us do this, and we were almost strangers,
Yeah. Pretty much.
so pretty much strangers. So if you could see us have these kind of conversations, it's not a show. This is where I get to talk my real life and share what I've learned.
Yeah.
And if you're willing to do that kind of work, this is the freedom that you get to be in your own households.
Yeah.
Sure.
I would love to invite everybody that watches the show, even if you're on the replay and you can feel free to use this space to practice. We would love to have you comment and disagree with us. Disagree with us with what we're saying. Bring your own life experiences, because when you do have the ability to practice communicating how you feel and taking yourself out of fear.
Yeah.
So many, I mean, fear could be a whole other, we could go down a whole rabbit
Oh
hole with
yeah.
that.
Mine was doubt.
Because when we are afraid, that's where a lot of the stuff comes from that we've talked about, is the fear of being who we are and saying how we feel, because we're going to get in trouble. We're going to be on punishment. Speaking of punishment,
You're not gonna like me. You're not gonna be my friend.
yep.
That's the
And
fear.
so when we can get ourselves out of that space, and you can use this space to practice with us, because that's essentially all we're doing. I can't tell you how many times we have finished this show and I've had something come up before the next show in my household regarding what, and I've had the opportunity to take what I've practiced to be in integrity
and apply it to your life.
Yes.
You know what we should do on episode?
What should we do?
We should have people come on as like a panel discussion and give
practice
them
live.
Give them an opportunity to say their piece. Maybe when we conclude this series, that'd be a good one.
Yeah.
To have people come back and reflect on the different parts that they listen to and share where they are.
Yeah. Brittany, you want to come sweat live on air? Because that's what it is for me every episode. I'm like, oh Lord.
You ain't lying.
Thank you for being here with me, my friend. I appreciate you. And you know, it's just as much goes to you for helping to create this safe space for us to have these conversations. And I appreciate it. And I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Because y'all wrong. Y'all wrong.
You're wrong. And I can't trust you to be right.
No integrity having, folks.
That's it. That's it. All right. I'll see you in a couple weeks.
Peace out.
Thank you guys for being here. We'll see you next time on Beyond 2D. Bye, everybody.